Retreaters, Sebastian here. I recently got back from the International Trombone Festival where I got my hands on the new mute bag from mymutebag.com. And it's awesome. I'm literally obsessed with it. It's basically every edition I was dreaming about from the original My Mute Bag, which is already awesome. So it's a messenger style bag. It has side pockets for water bottles and drinks. As you know, I travel a lot, so there's a handle on top to carry it, and there's a strap on the back to attach it to your rolling suitcase. There's way more storage pockets. There's a soft protective inner sleeve for your devices and extra pockets for your tablet, accessories, and music. No more stuffing all of your necessary trombone accessories into a small compartment in your case. Nice all black color for the stage. Even has straps on the bottom to attach a trombone or music stand. Made by a working musician for musicians, it's padded on all sides to protect your expensive mutes with removable dividers. Comes in trumpet, tenor, and bass trombone sizes. Makes an excellent gift. Ships internationally. Please stop wasting your time with plastic bags. Go to mymutebag.com. But you know I take care of you, right? Special offer for retreat listeners. For a limited time, go to mymutebag.com and type in the offer code Trombone Retreat at checkout to receive 20% off your purchase. That's one word, Trombone Retreat, at mymutebag.com. Hello.
Greetings.
Greetings. Thanks for coming out. Welcome to the Trombone Retreat, podcast of the Third Coast Trombone Retreat. Gotta say it. We're super excited to be here. This is the 53rd International Trombone Festival, and this is our fourth time being here. We've been lucky to interview live, Joe Alessi, Christian Limburg, Alan Kaplan, Bill Reichenbach.
So many names.
Let's log into the computer. So many names. Speaking of names, I'm joined normally by my co-host Nick Schwartz, but he's currently in a Metropolitan Opera rehearsal jail. Bradley Cooper wouldn't let him out. So in his stead, I'm joined by my good friend, ITF artist, member of the C Street Brass, River City Brass Beauty Slap, professor of trombone at West Virginia University, an actual TCU alum.
Let's go Frogs.
Either your current best friend or your future best friend. Please, a round of applause for Mr. Hakeem Bilal.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. Such lovely words you've said.
Yeah, that's all you'll hear.
That's it.
All week. That's all you're here. Yeah, I've known Hakeem a long time. We played together a lot in Pittsburgh, and I couldn't think of a more perfect person to hang out today. Really excited for you guys to be here today. We have an amazing guest. We have a guest that, for probably most people in this room, the first time you heard him, your reaction was probably like, how's that how can someone do that on a trombone? That was my train of thought.
I still feel that way.
So for those of you that don't know us, we are the Trombone Retreat. Podcast has been going on for, a couple years now. We're heard in over, I think the last count was like 112 countries. It started as a passion project, and it still is. We're full-time professional musicians, but this has been a true joy to do. And everyone that's come up this week and said how much they enjoy it or reached out, it really means a lot. So I really appreciate it. We appreciate you. Cool. So awesome to be here back in my home state of Texas.
Welcome home.
Thank you.
Also, congratulations on the Mavericks, I have to say. Just a little bit of basketball talk. The Dallas Mavericks NBA Finals participants.
This podcast is actually a Dallas Mavericks podcast. I don't know if that was communicated in the materials. So that, cool? Nice. Yeah. So thank you to our hosts, Karen Marston, Chris Van Hoff, Justin Cook, as well as Dave Begnosh. They worked tirelessly to put all this together. If you see them, they're like half awake half the time because the hours they put in. But buy them a drink if you see them. Tell them they're doing a great job. We really appreciate them.
It's a tough job. Really appreciate them.
It's a very tough job.
Give them a hug.
Give them a hug. So we are very grateful to be supported by Houghton Horns. They've been supporting us for a long time. They're located in Keller, Texas, not too far away. On your way home, stop by the showroom. It's an amazing place, amazing people. Stop by the booth in the exhibits. It's in the last room. My signature mouthpieces are there. We've been developing them for a couple years. They just came out a couple months ago. Really excited about them. Tenor trombone mouthpieces. Come try them before they sell out. Wow. Cool. And I'd also like to thank our unofficial sponsor, Whataburger.
Yes, the honey butter chicken biscuit has really fueled us throughout to this point, and they're still good. I miss them dearly when I come to Texas, and that's the first place I go after I get a beef rib.
It's really supporting the hunger at 2 a.m. It's really important.
24 hours?
Yes. It supported grad school. It supported everything. We really appreciate Whataburger for their support. Thank you, Whataburger. Taquitos, sausage, egg, and cheese taquitos.
No, honey butter chicken biscuit.
One hash brown. That's enough. If you're kind of hungry, you add a hash brown. That's all you need. Okay, cool. So, our special guest today, we are honored to invite. We've hung out a little bit, and we've been playing phone tag, and we've had a lot of close calls to schedule this interview, and we finally found a great venue worthy of him. 6-time winner of the Downbeat Magazine Best Trombone Poll, 15-time winner of the Jazz Journalists Association Trombonist of the Year Award, 20 solo albums, one of the most important voices in the trombone and jazz world today. Please welcome Mr. Wycliffe Gordon.
Welcome. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Thanks for having me. Hello, everyone.
How was I heard it was a bit of an adventure getting in here.
Yes, for quite a few folks. As a matter of fact, I think quite a few didn't make it, and I was close to being one of those. So I got in about 11:30, 11:45 last night, and I was scheduled to get here at 7:30, but due to the nice weather that we've been having.
Texas.
And well, I had family members that told me, they said, "Are you sure you're going to make it?" I said, well, I hope so. I'm not, if I'm flying the plane, probably not. But anyway, so yeah, but it was an adventure getting here, and even more of an adventure after got on the ground to get my lift to the hotel. And it just started pouring down rain. I was like, oh man, I'm happy that the airplane landed. Now I'm just hoping to get to the hotel. But anyway, here nonetheless, for the ITF only would I do this. So happy to be here with you guys.
Yeah, so you're feeling super fresh right now. Super awake.
Somewhat.
I mean, for a jazz musician, would you say something like at 10 a.m. in the morning, that's basically 2 in the middle of the night kind of feeling?
I don't know.
Are you an early riser?
I am.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I mean,
bucking the trend. All
lately
right.
I've been sleeping in until about 8 or 8:30, but normally I'm up around.
Sleeping in to 8. Okay.
If I'm working till 4 o'clock in the morning, then I'll sleep until 10. So, but I'm an early riser because I'm a jazz musician, but I'm also a professor. I teach and I still perform. So, most of the time, if I'm working, like today, normally I would just take a flight in the morning, but now that I've gotten a little older, I don't do that anymore. I put days around so I'm there, and just like last night, if I had anything to do last night, I would have missed it. Matter of fact, I did miss dinner with Yamaha. He said, well, when I take you to dinner at 6, I said, I don't mind until 7:30, and so we can get some drinks afterwards. Well, that didn't happen either. I barely caught the bar at the height, but anyway.
Priorities.
Yeah, that's conversation for some other time. So. But I'm a pretty early riser.
All right. So how often do you come to these kind of things? Big trombone festival.
I didn't come last year, but I was here the year before. If I'm available, and I try to get the schedule far enough in advance to where I can attend. But I did the one in Redwood City in California, when Joe Alessi was the Grand Poobah president of the ITF. I remember doing one in Birmingham, England, which was really nice just to go over there and see the different groups and to participate there. So I've been to about 5 or 6 of them. So unfortunately, I can't make it every year. But
it's a different experience, right? I mean, we're performing all the time, but it's rare we're performing for such a high concentrated trombone audience.
Yes, so true. We were talking about backstage about the benefit of bringing students to something like this is so important. I mean, not just for the students, but for us especially, because we don't get a chance to see one another that often. So when we get a chance to get together, it's a great time to fellowship with our fellow colleagues, to playing classical, jazz, whatever they're doing. And it's just like, it's a great time to get together. And it's also great for the students not to just hear the music, but to see that as well. And I remember one of my first ITFs was when they had it at Cornell University in Ithaca. And my son was 15, Corey Wilcox, and that was his first trombone festival. I got him his first trombone when he was 9, and he just pedaled around with it. Then 13, he started practicing, and 15, he was practicing. Then I took him to that, and he was in the room and saw all of the trombones and all of the trombone players and the classical trombone players and the jazz trombone players and the competitions. And for him, I think it sparked something inside of him to just want to do this. And he started loving the trombone, I think, around 13, and then on the way to New York, we were driving back to New York City, and I stopped to see some friends of mine in Rochester, New York, and they were playing, and Corey was with me. He had a horn there. I said, "Yeah, that's your son?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Play trombone?" "Yeah, have him come up and play a blues." And he could play. He had some stuff together. He checked out some of my recordings, and he was throwing my stuff in my face. And I said, well, the only thing about those recordings is I haven't recorded everything I actually can play. So then I threw some stuff in his face. And I mean, and he said, "Dad, I'm gonna get you one day," and which was like the greatest feeling for me. I said, that's what I want. But, see that happen in my own son, and for other students that I've gotten a chance to witness, participate, and just whether they're performing or just coming to the ITF, to do this is just another way to just reassure about our community, and it strengthens it. So
it really does, that camaraderie. And that's why I think the ITF is such a unique festival in the brass world, because you have the personality of trombonists. We're the coolest people in the world.
Yes.
And we all get in the same room, and it's positive vibes. And I think that we have to cherish that. And it's so nice to see that in students. And for my students that are here as well, you see that transformative, that immense perspective that you get from being at this festival. Have you ever brought students, like other students here?
Not to the ITF, but to the Midwest Clinic in Chicago, because I don't have a great large trombone studio, but we do have other students that's like in wind ensemble that are not necessarily in the jazz band. So there you, just like here, not just trombone, but you get the wind ensemble, you get the choir. So we've taken students to some festivals, but I have yet to bring any to the ITF. And I'm not sure where it's going to be next year, but maybe I'll do that if I can get them to practice.
Yeah, that's the ultimate question. So, I'm curious, just hearing you talk about that, your performing schedule, you're all over the world all the time. And when you're performing for an audience at a festival like this, is there any sort of different energy in your mind? Or do you feel different when you're performing for a room full of trombonists? Or is it just kind of, you're always central to who you are?
I don't really think about it, but in the back of my mind, probably, yes. You're conscious. They're listening for what? You have the trombone players. You have the audience, that's one thing, but when you have an audience full of musicians that play your same instrument, it's something special. But for me now, at this point in my career, I feel pretty comfortable just sharing, because I always say, like Duke Ellington would say this, make this quote. He said, "It's better to be a number one you than a number two somebody else."
100%.
So however you are, wherever you are, it's cool, because wherever you are now, you're on your way to either something better or you're trying to develop. But we do go through those stages where we were studying, like, J.J. Johnson. We're going to do a concert with J.J. Johnson tomorrow night. It's like, you have to learn that language and that repertoire. And why do we do that? Well, now you have something in your bag that you can pull from. It's like, why sit there and fish through trying to figure out what to play? And if you're improvising, I'm thinking about F minor 7 equals F, A flat, C, and E, and then the chord scale relationship, and then the position, and then the range. And I say just sing it. And when you've internalized all of those things, it's like it can just come natural to you. So anyway, and just accept that. I'll just share a quick story of why I say that.
We don't have time for stories on the podcast.
Kind of title.
Well, this is not a story. This is a not story. No, I remember when I first started playing professionally at that level. And to play professionally just means you get paid for it. But I started playing with Wynton, and after about 2 or 3 years on the road with him, a friend of mine from high school named Keith called me, had a cassette tape, I think some of you out there know what that is. Others of you may not. But I had a recording of me playing in high school, and they said, man, there's a tune called Dog Days. You know, I had my little solo. He played it for me on the phone. I said, hey, man, I'll give you any amount of money. Don't let anybody hear that. And I saw him a couple of weeks later, and he gave me the tape. And I listened to it, and I changed my mind or changed my perspective because that's where I was in high school. 4 or 5 years later, I've been practicing. I'm supposed to sound better or to develop whatever that means to you. And then I was no longer ashamed of what I sounded like because it was me. And I sounded then exactly like I sound now. I was able to play the trombone a little better. I learned new techniques to practice and how to practice, so I had a little bit more mastery of the instrument. But I learned to not be ashamed of where I was. So that's why I say be a number one. You, wherever you are, you're on your way to developing your best self, and wherever you are is cool.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the thing we talk about a lot on this podcast is we're celebrating individual stories. It's so easy, especially, and you see it a lot in classical too, is this idea of we're all trying to be the best version of one thing instead of celebrating our individuality and our unique voice. And it's like, it's a recipe for depression when you're constantly comparing yourself to other people and just trying to be better than someone else instead of, oh, what's my 100%? What's the best version of me that I can focus on? So that's a mindset it seems like you've developed over time. And then like, it sounds like half of that is just accepting where you are at the moment.
It is, and when you walk out onto the stage, regardless of who's in the audience, if you're cool with who you are, then you just hope that people will be cool with who you are and where you are as well. I tell my audiences all the time, particularly when I'm playing in a club or a venue, but even at a concert hall. Halfway through the show, I'm like, man, we're having a good time. They're playing with my band. I say, I hope that you all are enjoying yourselves and having a good time. And then in a jazz club, they may clap. And I say, I don't say that because I'm looking for applause. We're having a great time. And if you find that you're sitting there and you're not having a good time, it's probably your fault. And I say that to my audiences all the time. They laugh, and I'm just serious. So if you're going to participate, just enjoy your time, enjoy the music, and so.
Yeah, that's the only thing you can control, right? Like you can't control how an audience is going to react, right? All you can control is how much you're enjoying it and the energy and love you're putting into it, right?
Yes, and if you're doing that, I say 9.9 times out of 10, it will transfer to the audience and they'll receive it.
Yeah, as an audience member, when I see someone having fun, I have fun. And vice versa. If I see you on the stage and you look miserable, I'm like, oh man.
Yeah, and this is something that we have to work on constantly, even at the college and university level. Just stage presence. That's a really good point. If you don't look like you're having a good time, then how can you expect, it's going to go out there and you're looking miserable on stage. And you don't have to be smiling and shucking and jiving, but if you enjoy what you're doing, share that with folks. And when they clap for you, hopefully it's not because you stopped playing, but because they enjoy what you were playing. They're saying thank you, and you say you're welcome. So the audience is a very important part of any performance, but particularly for me. I don't ever get on the stage and decide I'm going to play for myself or just for the musicians. People are here. So I do that in the practice room when I'm working it out. But when people are here, within the first 3 or 4 tunes, I'm going to try to play something maybe from the swing era, something from the bebop era, something from early jazz, and try to read the audience and see who's there and what they're reacting to. So, and that's important.
How much does that get you going when you like have a great audience and they're really just giving you a lot of energy back?
Try to just ride that with them. A couple of times, it's different sometimes, but when you walk out on stage and you have an audience, and particularly students, like I did it was a music educators convention somewhere in Indiana at Ball State, and they had like 1,800, I think, music students. And at that college, and it may not have been Ball State, they don't have a music major. They're all majoring in physics and studying some science and to be astronauts. They are, I don't know if there's an astronaut class, but
I majored in astronaut.
I'm a major. What's your major?
Astronaut.
So anyway, but they had in those types of vocations, even like at University of Scranton, where there's no music major, but students want to play music, and they had like it's 1,800 students in their music department, and they have folks that teach music. But anyway, the point I was trying to make, they had a lot of kids there, and I walked out on stage, man, and from the time I walked on the stage, and the applause is cool, but when the kids are like...
That rush?
Yeah, I was like, oh man, they're here. And I think deep down, most people in the audience, they want for us to perform well. They're cheering for us, not just after we perform, but, they want that. And I say, if you feel good when you came in, you should feel great by the time you leave. If you feel great when you came in, you should feel greater. That's what our job is. So
we forget that sometimes, right? Especially when we're performing. It's like, and we're all teachers, and we have students that will perform, and a lot of times it feels like you're taking a test or you're about to, all those fight or flight symptoms come in. And the simplest thing sometimes, though it's harder to practice, is like what you're saying is like everyone wants to have a good time at the end of the day, right? We're all here to have a good time and enjoy music.
yes.
You rarely show up and you're like, I want to have a bad time.
I hope this is terrible.
Yeah, like
I hope he misses all the notes.
Yeah.
All right. 1967, May 29th, Waynesboro, Georgia. Growing up in Augusta, right?
Yes, most of my formative years were in Augusta. I was born in Waynesboro at age 10, and I moved to Augusta.
Okay,
Augusta, so the proximity of Waynesboro to Augusta is 30 miles. Waynesboro is very rural. But when I was young, we did have a Dairy Queen. But then where my folks were born was called Sardis. And what they had was like one country stores, a lot of farm land, and a lot of my people were farmers. But so Waynesboro, if you lived in Waynesboro to go to Augusta, that was like a big city. But if you lived in Augusta to go to Atlanta, that was like the big city. If you lived in Atlanta to go to New York or California or Chicago or Detroit, I say California, but L.A., a larger city, it's like, oh man, that's the big city. And if you live in New York or you travel around the world, you go, but you always come back to New York because everything that's in New York is all over. Anyway, but Waynesboro is just 30 minutes from Augusta, so it's like it's a different city, but it's 30 minutes away.
And what's childhood like?
My childhood, it was, I'm country. I'm a country dude. When I joined Wynton's band, they said, man, you country. It's like they're ribbon or something like that, but I enjoyed it. And on some weekends during the summer, we go to my cousin's farm. We weren't old enough to do that. My older cousins, they were farming, but they would let us ride on the tractor and things like that. But being there the first time, my father played and studied classical piano. He loved Beethoven, Mozart, Schumann, Schubert, and he had an upright grand piano. He had a reel-to-reel recorder with classical piano music on it, and he was like a radio man in the Air Force. So he put speakers in every room, so we heard classical music all the time. Practical application or performing, we heard him in church, so we heard gospel music. I didn't hear jazz until later. I think I was 13 or 14. But growing up in Waynesboro, I got a chance to hear my first band. Otherwise, I heard music on the radio, classical piano music at home, and gospel music in church. And so in first grade, they had a service band from the Army come. And they played, it was a big band. And then they played, and they featured every instrument. They had a saxophone to play, said demonstrate, and the trombones like, or whatever he played. And the trumpet, they taught us in church. That's the sound that blew down the walls of Jericho. Piano, I heard that all my life. And then the bass, it was electric bass, like, oh, cool. And then the drummer played like, I was like, oh, Eureka, that's me.
That's it.
And that's what I wanted to play. It was high, low, the rhythm. And I went home and just begging my parents for a drum set. They were like, absolutely not. Yeah. So anyway, but that was my first experience with, and I didn't even know that it was jazz. It was just because when I went to junior high school, we called it stage band music. So.
Yeah. So Lucius was your father. Mm-hmm. So church organist. So gospel. I mean, So you're hearing gospel even before you're getting into like serious jazz.
Yeah, yep, gospel, but not just the music, but the way that a deacon would pray in the church. If you're doing the devotional service, it's almost like a song, almost like a work song. Father. And it's like, I said, man, he's singing. Now, I didn't know what that was because I wasn't studying music, but I was in that room. And sometimes that's just the thing that has to happen. And maybe we can get into this later because I run into, we say classical. There's two kinds of music and two kinds of musicians, the good kind and the other kind. So there's no separation, but I was in the room and I told folks all the time, well, I don't do this. I don't improvise. I said, you just go into the room. Well, I don't know what that sounds like. Go into the room. And well, I'll say something about that a little later. So to answer your question, yes, I heard that. That was a sound that was in my ear. But the way that the preacher would preach and the way that he would speak and things and elements that we use in jazz, like call and response, the responsive readings, like from the pastor to the congregation, or from the leader of a song in the choir to the choir that's singing with them. So all of those things I grew up hearing. I didn't have musical terminology to put it with, but it was embedded and ingrained in me. And we called it gospel music. And it was because we're singing about God and Jesus, and it was in the church, and we called it gospel. But it's just music. And I'll tell you why later on, for me, once I started playing jazz, it was a little difficult because if you grew up into the church, folks said, there's two kinds of music, sacred and secular. I didn't even know those terms then, but they called it God's music and the devil's music. And they said that anything that's not gospel is the devil's music. And I'm like, I say this sometimes when I'm performing because I'm like, well, if jazz is the devil's music, I was in a bit of a conundrum. I was like, man, that devil got some good music. I don't know. And luckily, we come to find out that's just a way of thinking or a way that people perceive things. And that's not the case because all music is spiritual. And anyway, but that was a large part of my upbringing. And even before I started playing trombone, a large part of the palette of how I hear sound, the way that people would speak or the way that people would talk, the way they would sing. So, and it was a part of my formative years, so that's what I heard. I did hear classical music and I still love it. But when I'm playing and I want to be expressive, the expressiveness of someone singing and how they would deliver a song was like, oh wow, that's wonderful. And even before I knew what that was, I was in that room. So
I love that because I feel like every musician, it's that instinctual stuff that you get at the early age before you even have words to describe what you're learning and experiencing. It's so deeply ingrained in you that really just comes out. And that's like the most important thing. And we add on top of it by getting formal education and everything, but nothing changes like those first experiences. And that's such a beautiful experience.
And I'll say this happens, I'll say 99% of the time when I'm dealing with students. I don't care if they're reading, if they're studying classical piece. I don't even use those terms. But if we're working on literature associated with classical music, which all my trombone students have to do, you have to do the basics. There's no way around it. You can't be a great trombone player, flute, oboe, lute, or anything if you don't master the basics of playing an instrument. So, and a lot of the pedagogy deals with those things, melodious etudes, arbands, sometimes Blazevich clef studies. And I say, how deep do you want to go? And I said, turn the music around. In every jazz band, high school or college. And you can tell when they play if they're pretty familiar with the music, particularly when they start improvising and they're looking at changes. I'll say, stop. Is your solo written out? No. I said, what are you looking at? The changes. I said, why? And they're computing. I said, man, turn the stand around. And then start to play, and I said, don't worry about the change. Play what it is that you're hearing. I can tell you played it well enough. You know that solo, so play it without looking at it. And immediately, it just sounds natural, like you're having a conversation. It doesn't sound contrived. And I've done that with whole bands, big bands before, also high school. I say, hey, you sound like you all know this music. Turn your stands around. And when they have to play, and they're not stuck looking at the page and computing and putting the information in there, but just feeling and be able to internalize music, it's like, oh man, I forgot a couple of the notes, but what did that feel like? And it's like, I said, so try it. Get off the page sometime. I don't care if you're playing David Concerto, if you're playing, whether you're playing, that's not Carnival, Bluebells of Scotland or whatever it is. And I said, but you want to work on, take all that information that you have, now trust yourself. And that came from saying, when I was playing with Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra, we were doing Grieg's Peer Gynt Suite. And at the end of the night, our first concert was with the New York Philharmonic. And you all know Joe Alessi, great trombonist, master trombonist, who delves in improvisation as well as doing everything else. Phil Smith would play. So when we'd play at the end of the night, we may do like C-Jam Blues. Now, to hear anybody in the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra play, that's what that is. That's what we do all the time. But then when someone in the Philharmonic will play, it's like, oh, wow, they don't really get a chance to hear and see that. So when we went to Chicago and other orchestras that we played with, and they would stand up and improvise, it's like, oh man, I didn't know they could do that. Now, some of them probably shouldn't have, and I'm not saying from the standpoint not to try, but they were just a little over eager and overzealous, and it's just like, and that's it. We just need to channel that energy. But we played with Chicago Symphony Orchestra, and we were playing, and most of the times we were situated down front, and the orchestra was around us. And we started playing, and Phil Smith would play, and then folks were playing like, yeah, they're sounding great. And we were playing in Chicago, and this clarinet player stood up and sounded like Artie Shaw, Benny Goodman, and all rolled up into one. And the whole Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra did like this. It was like,
who that?
Said, yeah, exactly. Who's that? I mean, he mastered the language of the classical music that he was playing, that repertoire, and he's just like, I mean, Sidney Bechet. I'm like, man, who is this cat? We thought that one of our guys had gotten up and gone back there, and I was like, I said, and I say it all the time. Once you get a conceptual way of playing it, that's just learning, and I say, sing it. That's my master class all the time. I sing it first. If you sing accurately and in tune, that means that you can hear it and that you've internalized it. And anyway, I'm not going to go into that master class. But sometimes just get off the page. Just turn the paper around and have fun with it. And even if you miss a note, and it's so amazing when the students stop doing this, and then they have to, I say, close your eyes if you want to, but just play.
It forces you to say something. You got to say something. It's like,
yeah, because what you're going to say, and I say this even when I write my arrangements, particularly for piano and drums, I said, I'm trying to write piano parts, because if I got Eric Reed or somebody in the piano, or Herman Riley playing drums, for publishing reasons, I'll have to put something. But other than that, I'll just leave it blank. And I learned that from Wynton. He would just get to a part in the compositions. He would just put somebody's name down, like Veal or Cone, create something. And it's like, and he said, because you're going to create something much hipper than I can write for you to play. And sometimes you trust people to do that, but you get people that can trust themselves and just turn the page around. Do it. If you practice doing it, then in the practice room, then on the bandstand, it becomes nothing. Same thing.
That's the challenge, right? And I imagine you've worked with classical musicians that are bewildered and really wanted to be able to do these things. But I feel like with classical musicians, it's like we're so used to rules and like I have to do this way and it has to be this way. And it's just like a completely different side of your brain sometimes. And when you're just like, okay, start with singing, hear what you want to sound like, feel what you want to feel like, and not worry about perfection. And it's like, it's freeing, but it's hard to let go sometimes. So you're saying you just have to force it, like turn the stand around and sing. Instead of being limited by like, oh, I'm going to do what I'm capable of doing on my instrument. No, think about what you want to, what's the greatest scenario in my brain that I can imagine, then figure out how to do it from your singing.
Yes, and it's great to have someone with you that may have a little more experience doing it than you. Like a student asked me a couple months ago, so what are you working on? I'm going to take a lesson with you. I'm working on sight reading. So how are you doing that? He said, I just opened the book and I said, start playing. I said, yeah, that's great, but do you have anybody that's checking out what you're doing to say whether or not you're playing it correctly or not? Because you can work on sight reading, and I know I didn't have private lessons. I didn't know the benefit of private lessons when I first started, and my parents probably couldn't afford it anyway. So I developed a lot of bad habits. So with that first ITF or in Birmingham, I did that, which started this master class that I do now called Sing It First. It had a much longer title, but I said I want a jazz trombonist to come up, someone that's comfortable playing jazz, and then a trombonist that has played no jazz. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to improvise in less than 5 minutes. Now, it was just a concept. You didn't learn all the J.J. Johnson solos or Frank Rosalino or Carl Fontana, Curtis Fuller. It wasn't that. But I said, we're going to take, like what you said, used to rules, and I can see that even when folks stand up to play, and that's good. Learn the rules. Now let's break them a little bit or bend them. And so I said we'll take the tune "All the Things You Are," simple melody, ba dee da 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 dee da 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 dee da da, just the first 8 bars, and they'll learn that. Or the jazz trombonists knew it, the classical trombonists learned it. I said, now you're going to sing it. You're going to sing it accurately and in tune. And they did that. So when I sat down to the piano, I said, I'm going to slow everything down. I want you to play this melody, and then I want you to sing the melody. And once you get them off the horn, it's like, okay, now you don't have the fingering and the embouchure set in the right mode of resonance. Got to use your ear. And so I said, that's good. So now I'm gonna give you an example, and I'll play, and we're gonna sing something in phrases about this tempo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ba do do dee ba do da 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 do lo do be. So that's the melody. But I'll say, now I want to play, and then I'll stop swinging and just put like a groove on it. Doom, 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 doom. And I just want you to sing what you hear. Because when the first 8 bars, you have 7 different chord changes: F minor 7, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat major 7, D flat major 7, and then G7 and 2 bars of C7. But you only have 2 different tonalities. And when you're sitting there thinking about all that computing, it's like you sit down to the piano. That's the first 5 bars, all A flat major scale. I would go over to the piano and demonstrate, but trust me. And I said, now all I want you to do is just sing. Now, and so the jazz trombonist, well, he can play because he had some licks he'd worked out and whatnot. And the classical trombonist was fidgeting. I said, nah, put the horn down, sing. Because when you're singing, you don't have to think about positions. You're just using your ear. And sometimes they keep their range a little limited. But I'll say go outside of the range. Listen to these chord changes. And one of the great things we have nowadays that we didn't have when I was growing up, is like iReal Pro and all of that. Even before the Jamie Aebersold records. You all know what records are, LPs. They look like this. I think some of you knew. But so you have that at your disposal now. And then at that master class, I said, now just sing something. And just sing a simple phrase. Sing a simple phrase over the first 4 bars. He did that. I said, now sing it and then play it. And then he sang something, and he played what he sang. It wasn't written down. He wasn't thinking about chord changes, and it was close enough because we all practice scales, arpeggios, and things like that. But when you start to sing it, then you're not so focused on what the fingering is, what the position is, what the key change is, and all of that. And I said it was less than 3 minutes, much shorter than the time I just took to explain it. But the guy, and I'm going to shut up, the guy was improvising. I said, see, that's improvisation. So if you sing the melody, and then with that tune, the root movement is like a parallel motion. And I said, in fourths, and that's what I send to all of the students. I said, just try it. It's it's just 1, 2, 3, 4 whole notes, then quarter, 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 a simple melody, but the whole concept and principle behind improvisation is which is where you can build. And once you start doing that, it's that simple. But it would be good to have someone that has some experience helping you along. Sorry, I'm going to talk that.
Thank you for offering to be my private jazz teacher. I appreciate that.
Sure. Anytime.
Okay, let's get back to your life a little bit.
My life.
Okay.
That is my life.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Obviously.
Okay.
So piano was first for you.
Yes, my dad tried to get us. That's what we had at home.
Okay.
In the house, and he tried to get us to play piano. I was like 4, 5, 6 years old. But being a boy, growing up in the country, it was hard to sit to the piano, go down, down, and you hear the boys outside, they say, "Hey, throw the ball." And I was like, I don't want to be in here. I don't want to do this.
Go play.
And so my dad didn't make us. He let us go outside. We played marbles, and when we in the country, when we thought that wrestling was real, we could have broken our necks or anything. But yeah, but yes.
Oh, I remember when I found out wrestling wasn't real. Like,
Wait,
I literally cried. I was 7, to be fair, but yeah, that was a tough day when my hero Hulk Hogan wasn't. But
I cried when the Dallas Cowboys lost Super Bowl 13. But anyway, go ahead. We're not here to talk about that.
Dallas Cowboys. No, this is gonna be a happy podcast. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So.
Sorry.
And we're gonna get to the 23 instruments you play. Is that correct?
Not at the same time, though.
Not the same. Well, God, you should practice more then. Man,
No,
get your act together. So how do we come to trombone?
Trombone, we moved to Augusta when I was 10, and then when my brother went to junior high school, you could have up to 3 electives. One had to be PE. Then they had wood shop, home economics, and other auto shop and band. My brother chose to be in the band. He wanted to play trumpet or saxophone, all the boys, or drums, and most band directors like, I don't need any more drummers. But the band director suggested that he play trombone, and my parents got him a trombone, and he came home with the trombone one day, and I was like, we're a year apart. My older brother, Lucius. And so if he got something, I wanted it. That could be a popsicle, a dump truck, didn't matter. The trombone was like, I want one. And my mom said, well, they don't have a music program at your school. And technically they didn't, but there was a man that would come by, and we had to take PE, but the second half of your PE class, if you can get an instrument, he would teach us how to play an instrument. And I said, Mom, Dad, there's this guy, he comes by to school, and it's not a band class, but, and so they got me a trombone. And I fell in love with it. My first.
Do you remember the first trombone you had?
First trombone, oh, the Bundy, of course.
Bundy,
Yeah.
of course.
Is there another student model? Well, I guess everyone makes student model horns then, but Bundy was the best student model horn ever made. I don't know. But yeah, it was a Bundy, straight tenor horn. And so that was my introduction to trombone.
Was it a love at first sight kind of thing, or?
Absolutely not. It's a trombone. Who loves trombone at first sight?
Maybe good, that was a trick question. Just making sure.
But it was an instrument. Seriously, it was an instrument that I had, and so I wanted to learn to play it. I know the first note was in first position, and then the second position we learned is what? I meant, third, because we mark third with the finger.
The bell.
Yeah, with the bell, yeah. And that note being an E flat. And then that next year I went to junior high school with my brother, which was the last year of junior high school being 8th and 9th grade. And then we went to the middle school system after that. But I really loved playing, and I liked to practice. It was a horn, and I was like, oh, that trombone. I love my trombone. I'd be playing. And my mom would say, hey, stop. Just put it down, go do something else. And then and then when I got in high school, at our junior high school spring concert, we had 2 classes that were going to a high school, so all the high school students came. And of course, we were playing all the music that they played when they were at their junior high school, and the stage band and the concert band. And I remember the first time I heard a jazz recording, a great aunt of mine had passed, and amongst the things that were bequeathed to the family was this 5-record collection set of jazz. And it was from early jazz to modern jazz. And at that time, it was like Sonny Rollins, Quintet, Count Basie Big Band. But it started like early slave chants. I love the music from New Orleans, which is near and dear to me. And it had some band, Louis Armstrong, the song that they had in that compilation was Keyhole Blues, but another band playing when the Saints go marching in. So me and a buddy of mine had a bet. His name was Brian Hillman. He played trumpet. We had a solo that was 32 bars. He had 16 and I had 16. And of course, at that stage, they're written out. And I said, well, I'm going to play part of my written solo, and then I'm going to make up the rest of mine. He said, I'm going to do the same thing. I said, okay, now let's go for it. And we did our thing that probably was not killing, but the fact that we did it and the response we got was like, oh man, it was a nice feeling to try something off the page, and that sent me on that path to learning to do that, which included learning transcriptions and things like that. But yeah, once I started playing trombone, and by the time I got to high school, I was really loving it. So I would practice all the time. My mom worked the graveyard shift, and so she had to be there 11. She's leaving home 10:30.
What was she doing?
She was a nurse. Yeah.
Was your brother still playing at this time as well?
Yeah,
Okay.
He was. My brother Lucius, he still plays, but he's a PA. He went to the physician's assistant in the Army. He didn't want to. The path for us was to go to college and get a music degree to teach. We didn't think about performing or anything, like get a music education degree, and he did that. But when I think he went to Alcorn in Mississippi, then in Lorman, Mississippi, he did a student teaching, and after that experience, he said, I'm not going to be a music teacher. I'm going to go in the Army and do something else. Well, me, on the other hand, I really did want to do that, just to continue to play music. So, and that's where my path led me. But my band director, late Mr. Harkness Butler, was great. He had me auditioning for the All-County Band, the 10th District Band, the All-State Band, and even the McDonald's All-American High School Band. And I don't know if he knew that he gave me permission not to be afraid to do anything. He would always say, you can do it, Cliff. You can do it, Cliff. So I'm like, I'm going to audition for everything. So it's so much that when even guys said, well, you can't do that on the trombone, I was like, can't do what? So I'm not practicing until I get it. I said, okay, you can do this on the trombone. But Mr. Butler, he was great, and there were 5 other kids in our house. So when it came time for All-State or Georgia Music Educators Association, one parent couldn't leave the other with the other 5 kids home.
So everybody
my band
went.
Director took me, yeah.
So,
like you brought all your kids here.
Yeah, man.
So moving ahead, Florida A&M. And playing in the marching band there.
FAMU.
Can you briefly tell us about your experience there?
It was fun. I was in the best shape of my life. I wanted to go there because I figured with the marching band program being so well known, I was like, man, we must have a great music department and whatnot. And I'm not going to get too deep into it, but I did learn quite a bit while I was there. I got my breathing and everything together because we had to physically be in shape, mentally be in shape, and then musically be in shape. But I've been working on the musical part, like practicing scales and things like that, because when I played with the McDonald's band, there's something about when you get around musicians and people that are equal or they're playing at a higher level, it just raises your level or your awareness, which can then give you the inspiration to do so. And I was like, there's 12 trombonists, and they picked 2 students from each state in the United States. 12 trombonists. There were 9 tenor trombonists, 3 to a part, first, second, third, and then 3 bass trombonists. And I was number 9. I was at the bottom of the pack. Like, everybody played better than me. I was like, man, wow. And then they had the McDonald's All-American, the jazz band, and 2 guys from Georgia, Stan Wilkerson and myself, and 2 guys from New York, trombonists, Bob Leone and Todd Lyra. We made the audition for and made the jazz band. And those cats could play. I was like, man, and they had recordings of like Bill Walters' 4th Floor Walk Up. And I was like, man, that's a trombone. I was like, man, and it was on a cassette. And these cats could play. I was like, man, show me those licks. And it was really hip to be, and they're our peers. I'm like, man, these cats have been exposed to some things, and that kind of inspired me even more. But at FAMU, I was in the marching band for 4 years. I was in the jazz.
The March of 100, you mean?
Oh, yes, the March of 100. Yeah,
FAMU's marching band was awesome.
Yeah, thank you. It was, yeah. Oh, high step, well, and then the 300 steps per minute. It looks like they're running, but they're not. There's a concept that you would have to, it takes a minute to learn. And someone asked.
That's so not, you said you were going to demonstrate for us right now.
Yeah, I lied. I did. You can see, if you close your eyes, we can imagine me demonstrating. I mean, I can, but there's a point in driving I'd have to get to the edge of the stage, because when your foot hits the ground, it makes two sounds. The heel of your foot, and then I have on Roca, these some very great shoes, by the way. You're not going to hear it, but we would have boots on, and it'd be like, ta-da, like if you hear a horse step, like ta-da, ta-da, ta-da. So even that, so when we called it rattling, and we rattling that fast, you have to be in shape. So someone asked me in an interview afterwards, they said, do you think that your experience at Florida A&M made you a better musician or a better player? I said, well, yes, because even though they got some bad press about some things that happened after I left, it was because it happened in the band, it became about the band. It was not of the band, because that's not, the way that we did things. But I said yes, and I remember specifically one night we were practicing, getting ready for the halftime show, for the football game that weekend. My freshman year, I was the freshman section leader. My sophomore year, I became the section leader of the section. And for me, you had to be physically and mentally in shape, but you also had to play. And if we had to have the music memorized by Thursday, I told my section we have to have it memorized by Wednesday. If not, see you tonight at midnight. We're going to play until we have it memorized. So, but then there's those nights that we would practice and it may be raining out. And so we do the halftime show. And they said, we get to the end of the show, and Dr. Foster said, man, that's pretty good, but that's not good enough for the 100. Take it again. So it's raining. So, all right, let's get this. And then we was like, we get to the end of the halftime show. Man, that was a little bit better, but still not good enough for the Marching 100. And I said, yeah, but it's raining. But what that taught us to overcome whatever obstacles are in the way, and you can still do your best. And so I turned around to the section. He had 24. I said, man, let's get this now. So regardless of the rain, the puddles of mud, we had to do that show like it was sunshine out. And one of the marches we used to play was called In Storm and Sunshine. And so right now it's storming, but we have to march as if we're marching and the sun is shining. So the band, drum majors, blew the whistle. We brought it on and did the whole halftime show. And Doc Foster said, now that's the Marching 100. Now it was raining even harder, but we're standing there at attention. And so just to give you a perspective, like a lot of the guys, if they left college, because everyone wasn't music majors, but everyone wanted to be in that band. So if they played in band, they wanted to, you had to audition to get in the band. But if some of them went to the military, I don't care which branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they said boot camp was supposed to be really difficult. But if you went to the Marching 100, they said boot camp, that was a cakewalk. They said, they need to come have boot camp starting from pre-drill with us so anyway, that was a way for us to say don't let the rain stop you from getting to your accomplishment, and that just translated to a lot of different things. So I said, yeah, in that respect, I think that it did help me, because like getting here last night, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I'm gonna make it, and it was rain again, but it was a thunderstorm. Now, if it was thunder and lightning, that's okay. I quit the band. I'm gone. But it was helpful in that manner.
Well, that says a lot, because that preparation, and for those who don't know, like HBCU marching bands, when you play, like halftime is the show. Like you go to the football game, it's good, but you show up for that band, and that is such a tight group. And like that's a high level of excellence that's instilled at you from a young age, and how to have that translate through your career as a performer. You mentioned that the guys you played with an all-American band, they were better than you, but you had that sense of excellence from that band. And how did that translate once you evolved and became a more dynamic and like well-known artist?
That's a great question. I always just kept my eye on developing. I would learn. Like even in my studies that I give to my students now, I said I tell them this is by no means the path. It's just a path that I took, and I continued to do that. And even after I started playing professionally with Wynton, then I learned how to practice, because I didn't really know how to do that.
Yeah, can we talk about that? So you're talking about being the ninth player in this group, and then you go to Florida A&M. And then, judging by the math here, you started working with Wynton like the year after college. How do you go from the ninth guy to playing with one of the most famous jazz musicians in the world? So the next decade, from just for the audience, 1989 to 1995, we were playing with the Wynton Septet, and then your original member of the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra in 1995 to 2000. So how did your paths cross?
Well, I met Wynton my sophomore year in college at Florida A&M. He came there to do he didn't do a concert. Just it was Black History Month, February. He came to give a lecture on jazz and its role in our society and community. And he came to our jazz band rehearsal, and that's the first time everybody showed up. For one, it's like, oh, when your Wynton's coming, but I was listening to Louis Armstrong at that point, and I heard of Wynton. I said, oh, he looked like he's cool. And he played classical and jazz trumpet. I heard about him, but I wasn't really checking him out. So he came to our rehearsal, and the jazz band was there, and our jazz band instructor had us to play for him. It's like, okay. It was cool. Like I said, it's the first time everyone had come. Then he started talking about how, like, Count Basie or bands will come up with tunes. A lot of Count Basie's tunes are riff-based. Your riff-based, a 4-bar phrase that repeats. So he said, I want the rhythm section to play a blues, and every section come up with a riff. Having not practiced that before, but this is where that church thing can't come in, where I had grown up, like when the choir is singing behind the soloists. And so they played the first chorus. I said, okay, I got a riff. I showed it to the other 3 trombone players in the section, and then I harmonized it. So saxophones were still struggling. Trumpets, they were trying to figure that out. I just went to my church upbringing. And he let 2 or 3 more choruses go by. He stopped the band, and then I dropped a pencil or something on the floor. I reached over to pick it up. When I sat back up, the cats in the section were pointing at me, and one said, who came up with that riff? And they looked at me, and he just kind of looked at me. Yeah. So, and it was that meeting, and that he knew Scotty Barnhart, who always wanted to play with Count Basie, who's now the musical director for the Count Basie Orchestra, and he was playing trumpet with us there at Florida A&M during that time. And so he talked to Scotty after he left town. When he went to do a lecture, he played his trumpet, and this is another thing about at least our HBCU at that time that I didn't appreciate. They got the money to get Freddie Jackson to play the halftime show, but they didn't come up with the money or the budget for Wynton and his band to play, and everybody wanted to hear him. Everybody wanted to hear him play. So he did a lecture that night, and so I digress. But after he left, he called Scotty. He said, man, what's that trombone player's name? But Scotty told me this. He said, oh, you talking about Wycliffe? He went and said, oh, what the hell kind of name is Wycliffe? And then I told Scotty, I said, well, what the hell kind of name? Because I never heard that name before either. But anyway, long story short, he called me, and Scotty gave him my number. He said, you practice shit? Yeah, learn this Charlie Parker solo, this and that. And as a matter of fact, my first gig with him was in this city. In Fort Worth, there was a place here called the Caravan of Dreams. And Marcus Roberts called me. I was working at Pizza Hut. And I learned that when you're in college, because I heard some of y'all say something about Whataburger, when you're in college, you work at a restaurant, you're good. And if you close, you're real good because you can take food home and not be starving. So I had pizza and ramen noodles from a good part of my college living. So, and I came here, and we played Caravan of Dreams, and they were working on music for that record, The Majesty of the Blues, so they didn't really play anything in the sound check. They brought me up and went and had me playing some parts. So I didn't really hear the band until that night. And man, when they started playing, I was sitting in the dressing room, and I was like, man, if Florida A&M, if Tallahassee wasn't so far from me, I would get up and walk out of here and leave. Because the level of music they were playing was like, so I was like, oh my goodness. And I knew what it was. I said, but and then he would call me up and play a blues or something like that, and that was cool. But at the end of that week, I was like, between he and Marcus Roberts, they gave me records to buy, 2 or 3 pages, 2 columns on each side, front and back of records to buy. So I started doing that. And the next time he called me, it was at Blues Alley. that year. And I started practicing. I wasn't making a whole lot of noise, but he invited me to then play on the record he was doing. And he was going to ask J.J. Johnson to do it, but he said, do you want to play on this record? I was like, yeah. And that led to that summer.
I mean,
Sure.
what's going on through your mind? I mean, did you realize how big a deal this was at the time?
No, I was practicing. I wasn't even thinking about, because I have students ask me all the time, well, how do you make it? I'm like, I didn't do this. I didn't do this to make it. I mean, you want to. You have those, I guess, those dreams when you're younger. I want to be in a popular band. I want to make a lot of money, do this and that. But for me, playing jazz and or even classical music, it was about playing the music at the highest level. And when I got in that band, you talk about me being number 9 out of the 9 tenor trombonists. I was number 9 in the band. I was the lowest on the totem pole, but everybody played circles around me, but I was only trombonist. I'm just talking about in terms of their ability. So I had to go back and deal with basics and get all of that stuff together. I could hear it, but I couldn't execute. And this is why. So you always go back. You got to master the basics. Before you can play classical trombone, sky trombone, jazz trombone, you have to learn to play the trombone. And that's when I got a chance playing with him. I met Joe Alessi the first time. I met great trombonists in classical and jazz. And I was just like, and I just kept getting at it. I'm like, man, these cats can play. And then he got to where he would write anything. And I was like, man, this not trombone stuff. Like on 4 and 1, I mean, valve trombone maybe, but I'm like, well, he did it. And it's just, that goes back to that Florida A&M thing. That's an obstacle, because the move you slide that fast, get it. It can be done. You can do it.
I mean, first of all, what an education. I mean, what a opportunity to absorb from some of the greatest people ever. And he obviously saw something in you, maybe before you even saw it, I would guess. But like, was there any like imposter syndrome at first, and then some breakthrough moment where you're like, wow, I deserve to be here, like I can hang?
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever said I deserved to be here, but I remember when I first started playing with him, I had my girlfriend in high school, and I was heartbroken because things didn't work out, and I was in the band, and I went and asked me if I wanted to play that summer. Well, this is how it happened. I did Caravan of Dreams in February or March of that year, 1988. And then I did Blues Alley December of 1989. And then he said, because of Blues Alley, do you want to play this recording? That recording was in March and April, and that was 1989. And then he said, do you want to, what are you doing this summer? I said, my scholarship doesn't cover summer school, so I will, we're going to come out and play for a little bit. And so we went to New York. I didn't have a passport. Then we had to go down to Aruba. And Eric Green was filling in for Marcus Roberts at the time and it was my 4th year in college, his freshman year. And he said, he asked Wynton about colleges. And I only went to college for 1 year, and I left and talked to Wycliffe. And I wasn't happy at that time in college, and Wynton then asked me, he said, I thought things were going good for you. I was like, well, his dad had just left VCU and went to UNO. I said, I'm thinking about transferring because I want to go and study with someone where I had fun at FAMU, but I want to go where the jazz is. And he said, do you want to stay out here and play for a while? And I thought about it for all of 10 seconds. Yeah. I said, yes, and that answer led to, I stayed on during the rest of the year, and it led into my career as an educator, composer, arranging everything that I did, because being around that level of musicians, then I began to get exposed to that level of composers, arrangers, publishers, and I saw the world of music a different way, and I try to share that with all of my students because it's there, it's in front of you. It's like everything you see here. You got publishers, you have people to make horns, and I heard you say you're doing mouthpieces, and so entrepreneurship, so everything's there. And I was so glad that world opened up to me, and I just tell people I'm thankful daily that I'm a musician. I do what I love to do. People say, you get tired, you're going to retire? I said, no, I'll stop playing when I can't play anymore, but this, I love doing it.
So we have a hard out in about 5 minutes, and so we always close with a rapid fire section. So just a couple questions we ask every guest at the end, so I'll just throw a couple quick ones. We always start with, what advice would you give to your 18-year-old self?
Not to get married right away. That's funny. My 18-year-old self, I love to practice, and I see that sometimes, not in all students, but it's in the world that we live in now, where we get information really fast. You need to know something, it's on your phone. Where when we were in school, you had to either go to the library at your school or the library in town. So how we process things. But yeah, I would just say I would take my time, and not because I have a family and children, but I would take my time to do that. Don't do that so fast.
Okay. If you had to, it's a tough question, but if you had to pick one recording, what's the recording you're most proud of?
My recordings? I'd say the soundtrack to it's called Within These Gates of Mine. Yeah, Within These Gates of Mine, and it's difficult. You can listen to the CD, but it's actually a soundtrack for a silent movie. It's the second one I did by Oscar Michaud, and it's a big band playing live with the recording. So if you can watch it with the images, it's that much more powerful. But I played on every kind of music that I heard growing up. It was gospel, jazz, a little bit of classical, vocalist. I used the band as much as I could as an orchestra, but I'd say that one.
Awesome.
I've got one here. What's one that you see what's something that you see current students doing that you'd like to see more of?
What do I see them doing?
Or not doing that you'd like to see more of?
Well, current students, I think about my students, but then students that were at Juilliard are a little different than students that were at Manhattan School or at Augusta University. But preparing and respecting the process of developing. Like I said earlier, we get information fast. And I remember a student when I was teaching at Michigan State, he was majoring in physics, he was a music major and something else, and engineering. And I'm like, there's 3 big majors. I said, man, and then he was a trombone student. And he said, I like them some melodious etude and the arbors, but he said, I want to play like you. What's the shortcut? I said, the shortcut is the straightest line between where you stand in a practice room. There is no shortcut. You may be able to get information fast. You may be able to access information fast, but your ability to develop, you still got to do that the old-fashioned way, and that's the best part of that. So I wish I could see the students respect that part of the process in their development.
Cool.
It's deep.
Just two more. Dream dinner guests, but made up of only jazz trombonists, living or dead.
Oh, jazz trombonists in my day?
Alive or dead? Just if you could sit down and have dinner with any trombonist, jazz trombonist ever.
Well, all of them. I'll say this. JJ, but Jack Teagarden, who I love, and didn't get a chance to meet him. But, Carl Fontana, Frank Rosalino, Curtis Fuller, who I got a chance to meet. I got a chance to meet JJ and talk with him. And meeting JJ, I said I was not going to do what I heard most trombone players do. Ask him about how he articulates it. I'm not going to do it. But we were in Switzerland, Bern, Switzerland. Our hotel rooms weren't ready. So JJ and I went on a walk. And we're talking. And I made it down there. And then coming back, I'm like, JJ, man, how do you talk so clean? How do you... And he said, well, so Wycliffe, I just do it. I said, damn it, he's not going to tell you. He's not going to tell anybody. So, but yeah, I just all the trombonists, I play other instruments. And I mean this when I say this. I think the trombone has the widest range of voices in jazz and classical music, but I've spent most of my time playing jazz. So when I started thinking about schools of jazz trombone, the schools of jazz trombone plunger players, trumpet players and saxophone players, they're more popular, but the trombone has the widest range of voices. So that, and I've studied quite a bit of the difference between Al Gray and Tricky Sam Nathan or Booty Wood or somebody like Tyree Glenn, who's a great vibrato. I mean, their contributions. So at Louis Armstrong, I would definitely love to have.
We'll let him come to the trombone dinner. Okay, and in closing, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to say?
Yeah, probably, but I have no idea what that is. I don't know.
I mean, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. There's so much. There's so many things I would love to cover, but at this festival, we have a tighter window.
We have other things to do.
I just want to thank you so much for first of all, sitting down with us and for your contributions to the trombone world and the contributions to the art world and the contributions you continue to make and will make. And we can't wait to hear you perform. That's tomorrow night. Better practice, yeah. But thank you so much for being here. It's here for Wycliffe Gordon.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you, Joe. Thank you.
See you guys around.